The lights were on, the cameras were live, and then it happened. A slur, a breakdown, a confession no one was meant to hear. In seconds, fame turned, toxic contracts burned, and reputations died in front of millions. These are the moments when celebrities didn't just fail, they self-destructed on live TV. Iggy Azalea. In 2014, Iggy Azalea was unstoppable. Every radio station played Fancy, every playlist featured her name, and pop culture could not escape her accent or her hooks. When Dancing with the Stars invited her to perform live during the season finale, it was supposed to be a celebration of a massive breakout year and a reminder that she was at the very top of the game. Then the music started, the cameras rolled, and her earpiece quietly betrayed her. No clear cue, no reliable playback, just that brief frozen moment where every performer realizes something has gone terribly wrong and there is no escape. She missed the opening beat, stumbled into the performance, and suddenly the victory lap turned into a survival exercise broadcast to millions. Afterward, Iggy explained that there was a technical issue with the sound in her ear. That explanation made sense. Unfortunately, live television does not run on logic, and the internet does not offer refunds. What viewers remembered was not the explanation, but the clip replayed endlessly, dissected frame by frame, and turned into instant commentary. To be clear, this moment alone did not destroy her career. Industry conflicts, label issues, and the pressure of overnight superstardom all played their part. But this performance became the moment where the narrative shifted. She went from flawless hitmaker to artist under scrutiny, all because of a few silent seconds on live TV. The lesson is simple and brutal. You can dominate the charts, own the moment, and control the conversation. But on live television, everything depends on a tiny piece of plastic in your ear. When that fails, the silence is filled immediately, and it is filled by the internet. Robin Thicke. In 2013, Robin Thicke finally crossed the line from industry veteran to full-blown pop star. Blurred Lines was everywhere. Radio loved it. Charts crowned it. The song turned Thicke into a household name almost overnight. The MTV Video Music Awards performance should have been the ultimate victory lap. Instead, it became the moment everything started to unravel. Sharing the stage with Miley Cyrus, Thicke performed Blurred Lines in a routine that instantly overshadowed the music itself. The performance leaned hard into shock value, pushing boundaries in a way many viewers found awkward, excessive, and uncomfortable. What was meant to look edgy and playful landed more like a public miscalculation broadcast to millions. The reaction was immediate. Critics pounced, social media erupted. The conversation shifted away from the song and straight toward Thicke himself. Suddenly, Blurred Lines was no longer just a hit. It was controversial. The performance became a cultural punchline and a lightning rod for criticism that refused to die down. For Thicke, the fallout was severe. Follow-up music failed to connect. Public perception cooled rapidly. The same song that launched him into superstardom now felt like an anchor dragging him under. One live performance had permanently changed how audiences viewed him. Years later, Thicke found a way back into the spotlight as a television personality, reminding audiences of his talent in a safer, more controlled setting. But the damage from that night lingered. Live television did not expose a lack of talent. It exposed a lack of restraint. And if you ever wondered how fast a hit song can turn into a warning label, just remember that sometimes the most dangerous line is not in the lyrics, it is the one you cross on live TV. Jamie Kennedy. By 2013, Jamie Kennedy was no longer at the peak of his fame, but he was still recognizable enough to be trusted with a live New Year's Eve broadcast. The idea sounded simple. A comedian account down some jokes and a cheerful send-off into the new year. Live television, however, had other plans. Almost immediately, the show began to unravel. Technical problems, stacked up cues were missed, and the atmosphere grew tense instead of festive. Rather than smoothing things over like an experienced host, Kennedy appeared visibly frustrated on air. He snapped at the production team, argued into a hot mic, and let the chaos control him instead of the other way around. As the night went on, the broadcast felt less like a celebration and more like an awkward rehearsal that accidentally went live. The moment that sealed its fate came at midnight when the countdown itself was mistimed. A New Year's Eve show that cannot even welcome the new year on time is essentially admitting defeat in real time. Viewers were stunned then entertained for all the wrong reasons. Social media erupted instantly, branding the special as one of the worst New Year's broadcasts ever aired. What was meant to be edgy and spontaneous came across as uncomfortable and unprofessional. Kennedy's career had already slowed, but this broadcast became the moment many people point to as the final confirmation that his time as a mainstream TV host was over. Live television does not reward panic. It exposes it. And on that night, it exposed everything. Fergie. By 2018, Fergie was no longer dominating the charts the way she once did, but her name still carried weight. Former Black Eyed Peas frontwoman hitmaker pop culture fixture, so when she was chosen to sing the national anthem at the NBA All-Star Game, it felt like a respectable, dignified moment to remind everyone she still had it. Then she started singing. Instead of the traditional steady delivery audiences expect, Fergie went for something bold, slow-breathy, and unmistakably sensual. The anthem was stretched, stylized, and performed as if it were a late-night jazz lounge remix rather than a pre-game ceremony. Within seconds, cameras caught players exchanging looks, biting lips, and struggling not to laugh. The reaction was instant and merciless. Social media exploded. The performance was replayed endlessly, often paired with reaction shots of confused athletes and stunned spectators. What was meant to be artistic interpretation became a viral punchline by halftime. To be fair, Fergie did not forget the lyrics, miss a cue, or suffer a technical failure. She sang exactly what she intended to sing. That may have been the problem. Live television made it clear that some moments are not begging for reinvention, especially when millions of viewers expect tradition. Afterward, Fergie issued a polite statement explaining her creative choice, but the internet had already made its decision. The anthem performance quickly became the defining pop culture reference point of her later career, overshadowing years of successful music. Live television did not question her talent, it questioned her judgment. And if there is one thing the internet loves more than a bold choice, it is watching that bold choice age badly in real time. So what do you think? Was this a bold artistic choice that people just did not get, or a reminder that some songs really do not need a remix? Let us know in the comments and be honest. Did you laugh, or did you try very hard not to? Steven Seagal. In the early 1990s, Steven Seagal was riding high as an action hero. He was serious, intense, and built an entire persona around being untouchable. So when he was invited to host Saturday Night Live in 1991, it should have been a chance to show range and prove he could laugh at himself. That was the problem. He did not want to laugh at himself. Behind-the-scenes reports from cast and writers later painted a brutal picture. Seagal reportedly refused to play along rejected jokes and treated comedy sketches like real fight scenes. Instead of embracing satire, he pushed to look dominant and cool, missing the entire point of the show. SNL thrives on self-mockery. Seagal wanted control. What aired was painfully stiff. Sketches fell flat, the energy felt hostile, and the audience could sense something was off. Rather than a fun detour from action films, the episode became uncomfortable to watch. Even years later, multiple SNL alumni have openly referred to Seagal as one of the worst hosts in the show's history. The damage was not immediate, but it was lasting. After his SNL appearance, Seagal's career slowly drifted downward. Big studio roles dried up, and he was increasingly relegated to low-budget direct-to-video films that barely registered with audiences. This was not a scandal or a meltdown. It was something worse. A live television moment that revealed a truth Hollywood did not like. Steven Seagal could throw punches, but when it came to playing along, he simply would not. And live TV made sure everyone noticed. Mariah Carey. By 2016, Mariah Carey was already untouchable in terms of legacy. Decades of hits, record-breaking vocals, and an annual holiday takeover had cemented her status as a music icon. Performing on Dick Clark's New Year's Rockin' Eve should have been routine. Big stage, global audience, familiar songs, and a countdown to midnight. Then the audio collapsed. As the performance began, Mariah's earpiece malfunctioned, leaving her out of sync with the backing track. She could not hear the music properly and quickly realized the show was slipping out of her control. With no chance to reset, she stopped singing, Portions of the song paced the stage and openly referenced the technical issues while the dancers continued as if everything were normal. The contrast was impossible to ignore. A polished stage, a confused performance, and millions of viewers watching it unfold in real time. Within minutes, clips flooded social media. Some called it a disaster. Others blamed the production. Everyone had an opinion before the new year even officially began. The technical problems were real, but live television rarely rewards explanations. It judges reactions. The moment did not end Mariah Carey's career, but it cracked the image of flawless control she had carried for years. Even legends are vulnerable when live TV decides not to cooperate. If you enjoy breaking down iconic live TV moments like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because the next countdown might come with another moment no one saw coming. A.J. Clemente. A.J. Clemente was not famous, controversial, or even established. He was a young journalist on his very first day as a co-anchor at a small North Dakota news station. Years of school and preparation had led to one simple moment. Sit at the desk, read the teleprompter, and begin a career. Then live television reminded him how unforgiving it can be. As the opening graphics rolled, Clemente believed he was not yet on air. The microphones, however, strongly disagreed. In what he thought was a private moment, he muttered several profanities that went straight into homes across the region. By the time the broadcast officially began, it was already over. The clip spread instantly. Within 24 hours, Clemente was suspended and then fired. His career as a news anchor ended before viewers even learned his name. One mistake, no warning, no second chance. Ironically, the incident made him nationally famous. He appeared on late-night television and became a viral punchline, but viral fame does not translate into newsroom trust. In journalism, credibility is everything, and once it is gone, it rarely returns. There was no scandal, no bad intention, just one open microphone. And in broadcasting, that is all it takes to turn a first day into a last day. Janet Jackson. In 2004, Janet Jackson was already a certified legend. Decades of hits, cultural impact, and industry respect had secured her place in music history. Performing at the Super Bowl halftime show should have been nothing more than a victory parade on the biggest live television stage in America. Instead, it became the most infamous second of her career. During the performance, a brief wardrobe malfunction occurred in the final moments of the show. It lasted barely a heartbeat, but live television does not measure time the way real life does. That single moment was replayed, endlessly frozen, zoomed, debated, and weaponized across every media outlet imaginable. What followed was brutal and wildly uneven. Despite not being solely responsible for the incident, Janet took the overwhelming share of the backlash. Radio stations quietly stopped playing her music. Television appearances dried up. Industry executives distanced themselves as if she had committed an unforgivable crime rather than suffered a live broadcast mishap. The reaction said more about the culture than the incident itself. Careers were not just paused, they were punished. Meanwhile, others involved moved on with far less damage. Janet, however, was effectively erased from the mainstream conversation for years. Time eventually corrected the record. Public opinion softened history, reevaluated the outrage, and Janet Jackson reclaimed her legacy with long overdue recognition and honors. But the damage was done. This was not a meltdown, a bad decision, or a lack of talent. It was proof that on live television, a single second can outweigh a lifetime of achievement. Charles Rocket. In the early 1980s, Charles Rocket was positioned as one of Saturday Night Live's rising stars. He was a regular on Weekend Update, a visible face in a new cast and part of NBC's plan to push the show into its next era. Expectations were high and the pressure was even higher. Then live television struck. During a 1981 broadcast, Rocket accidentally dropped a profanity on air.
Man, it's the first time I've ever been shot in my life. I'd like to know who fucked me.
Today, it would barely cause a ripple. At the time, it was considered a serious violation of broadcast standards. Network television treated that word as completely unacceptable, and there was no room for context, intent, or forgiveness. The fallout was immediate. Combined with poor critical reception for the season, Rocket's slip became the final excuse NBC needed to clean house. He was fired along with several other cast members, and his run on SNL ended almost overnight. One word outweighed months of work and years of ambition. Rocket continued acting afterward, landing roles in films and television throughout the 1980s and 1990s. He worked steadily, but his career never fully recovered its early momentum. In pop culture memory, he became less known for his performances and more remembered as the guy who crossed the one line you never crossed on live TV. This was not a scandal or a meltdown. It was a reminder of how unforgiving broadcast television once was. Live TV did not allow mistakes back then, it turned them into cautionary tales. Paula Deen. By 2013, Paula Deen was television comfort food. Southern charm, butter-heavy recipes, and a brand built on warmth and familiarity. Then a lawsuit from a former employee pulled her off the kitchen set and into a legal deposition that would change everything. Under oath, Deen acknowledged having used a racial slur in the past. The admission spread instantly, and the image she had spent years cultivating cracked wide open. Sponsors panicked, networks paused, and the internet did what it always does when a wholesome brand collides with ugly context. Trying to regain control of the narrative, Deen went on live television to explain herself. Instead of easing concerns, the appearance only made things worse. Her tone came across as defensive and self-focused, and viewers felt she was centering her own pain rather than addressing why people were upset in the first place. The gap between intention and perception grew wider by the minute. The fallout was swift and expensive. Shows were canceled. Partnerships evaporated. Corporate ties were cut almost overnight. What had once been a carefully curated empire unraveled faster than a failed souffle on live TV. Deen would later attempt a comeback, but the damage to her mainstream reputation was permanent. This was not a technical glitch or a slip of the tongue. It was a reminder that live television cannot soften a hard truth, and sometimes the camera simply reflects what people were already afraid to see. So what do you think? Was this a failed attempt at damage control or proof that some mistakes only get louder once the camera is on? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Jenny Slate. In 2009, Jenny Slate achieved what countless comedians never do. She earned a spot on Saturday Night Live. For a young comic, SNL is not just a show, it is validation, a launchpad, and a promise of a future in mainstream comedy. Slate had worked years for that seat at the table, and now she was finally live on air. Then live television reminded her how thin the margin for error really is. During her very first episode, while performing a sketch, Slate accidentally let a profanity slip out. It was not planned, not emphasized, and not repeated. It was a split-second mistake. Unfortunately, SNL is built on one unforgiving rule. You do not do that on live network television. The reaction was swift and quiet. There was no dramatic firing, no public announcement, and no on-air apology tour. Slate simply did not return the following season. Official explanations were vague, but the message was clear. One word had erased a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. At the time, it felt like a career-ending moment. One bad beat, one nervous slip, and the biggest stage in comedy was gone. Many performers never recover from that kind of setback. But this is where the story turns. Instead of disappearing, Slate slowly rebuilt. She found success in voice acting, indie comedy, and television roles that allowed her personality to shine without the pressure of live broadcast rules. Over time, she became a recognizable and respected presence in shows and animated series that reached millions. In the end, SNL did not define Jenny Slate, it redirected her. Live television shut the door instantly, but persistence opened several others. Sometimes one mistake does not end the story, it just changes the genre. Brian Williams. For years, Brian Williams was the face of credibility in American television news. Calm voice, steady delivery, trusted presence. As anchor of NBC Nightly News, he was not just reporting the story. For many viewers, he was the story. Then one story came back to haunt him. Williams had repeatedly told an anecdote about covering the Iraq War, claiming that the helicopter he was traveling in was forced down after being hit by enemy fire. It was a dramatic, harrowing tale that reinforced his image as a journalist who had been in the thick of history. There was only one problem. it was not true. Other journalists and military personnel who were actually present came forward and clarified that Williams was not in the helicopter that took fire. He was in a different aircraft arriving later. The version he had told on air had slowly evolved over the years, growing more intense each time it was repeated. When the truth surfaced, the backlash was immediate. Viewers felt betrayed. Fellow journalists were furious. Credibility, the one thing a news anchor cannot afford to lose, evaporated almost overnight. Williams issued a public apology admitting he had misremembered the events, but the damage was already done. NBC suspended him and eventually removed him as anchor, demoting him to a lesser role. His career did not end, but it was permanently reframed. From that moment on, Brian Williams was no longer just a trusted journalist. He was a cautionary tale. Live television did not expose a bad night or a single mistake. It exposed how dangerous it is when storytelling drifts too far from truth. And once trust is gone, no teleprompter can bring it back. John Travolta. In 2014, John Travolta stepped onto the Oscars stage as a seasoned Hollywood icon. Decades of stardom, countless red carpets, and enough award show experience to make this moment routine. His task was simple. Introduce the singer about to perform Let It Go, the biggest song on the planet at the time. What came out of his mouth was not her name. Instead of Idina Menzel, Travolta delivered a completely new identity to the world, a name so wildly incorrect that it instantly sounded fictional. The audience laughed. The internet paused for half a second, and then the memes began printing themselves at industrial speed. The moment was brief, but live television is ruthless with short moments. That single introduction overshadowed the performance itself. Social media replayed it endlessly, remixing the clip, turning the mispronunciation into a running joke that refused to die. For days, it felt like Hollywood had collectively agreed to forget the Oscars existed solely to focus on one mangled name. Travolta quickly apologized, and to her credit, Menzel handled the situation with grace. There was no public feud, no lasting hostility, just an awkward mistake frozen in pop culture amber. His career did not collapse, his reputation did not implode, but the damage was subtle and persistent. From that night on, John Travolta was no longer just an actor. He was the man who introduced Adele Dazeem. Live television did not ruin his career. It simply gave him a nickname he never asked for and will never fully escape. Howard Dean. In 2004, Howard Dean was a serious contender for the Democratic nomination. He had momentum, grassroots energy, and a message that resonated with voters tired of politics as usual. After finishing third in the Iowa caucuses, Dean took the stage to rally supporters and prove that his campaign was far from over. Then came the scream. At the end of his speech, fired up and full of adrenaline, Dean let out an enthusiastic yell meant to energize the crowd. In the room, it worked. On television, stripped of context and replayed endlessly, it looked strange, awkward, and completely unpresidential. The media looped it non-stop. Late-night hosts had a field day. The internet, still young but already ruthless, crowned it instantly. The moment became known simply as the Dean Scream, and it swallowed everything else. Policy positions vanished.
Texas and New York, and we go to South Dakota and Oregon and Washington.
Campaign strategy disappeared. All anyone talked about was that one sound. A single burst of enthusiasm was transformed into a symbol of instability and ridicule. Dean's campaign never recovered. Donations slowed, support faded, and the race moved on without him. While he later found success in other political roles, his presidential ambitions ended right there, frozen in a few seconds of live television. This was not a scandal or a lie. It was a reminder that in politics, optics can outweigh substance. Live TV did not judge what Howard Dean said, it judged how he sounded. And sometimes, that is all it takes for a campaign to lose its voice. Be honest, if this moment happened today, would anyone even care? Or would it disappear in 5 minutes on social media? Drop a 1 if you think the scream killed the campaign, drop a 0 if the media blew it way out of proportion. Steve Harvey. In 2015, Steve Harvey was everywhere. Game shows, talk shows, stand-up hosting gigs. He was considered one of the safest pairs of hands on live television, which is exactly why he was trusted to host Miss Universe that year. Big stage, global audience, simple job. Read the card, say the name, smile. Then came the card. Steve announced Miss Columbia as the winner. Confetti fell. Tears flowed, crowns were placed. For a few surreal minutes, the world accepted a new Miss Universe. And then Steve looked back at the card, live, on camera. In real time, he had read it wrong. What followed was one of the most uncomfortable walkbacks in television history.
The first runner-up is Colombia.
Steve returned to the stage, microphone in hand, and did the unthinkable. He corrected himself. Miss Philippines was the real winner. Miss Colombia was first runner-up. The celebration stopped. The smiles froze. The crown changed hands under the brightest lights imaginable. The internet exploded. Memes, jokes, reaction videos, and endless replays turned the moment into instant pop culture legend. For a brief period, Steve Harvey became the punchline of the entire planet. To his credit, he did not dodge responsibility. He apologized immediately and publicly, owning the mistake instead of hiding behind producers or cue cards. That decision mattered. The storm passed, the jokes faded, and his career survived. Live television did not destroy Steve Harvey. It tested him. He failed the moment but passed the recovery. And in a world that rarely forgives mistakes, that ability to stand there and say it was my fault made all the difference. Will Smith. In 2022, Will Smith walked into the Academy Awards as Hollywood royalty. Decades of box office dominance, a carefully polished public image, and a career built on charm, humor, and relatability. That night was supposed to be his coronation, capped by an Oscar win. Then came the joke. When Chris Rock made a comment about Smith's wife, Will initially laughed along with the crowd. Seconds later, everything changed. Smith walked onto the stage, struck Rock, returned to his seat, and shouted at him on live television. For a moment, the audience thought it was scripted. Then the room went silent. The Oscars had stopped being an awards show and turned into a global shock event. Clips spread instantly across the world. News outlets dropped their planned coverage. Social media exploded with debates, memes, outrage, and disbelief. The actual awards that followed felt almost irrelevant. Even when Smith later won Best Actor, the moment was overshadowed by what had already happened. The fallout was severe. Smith issued apologies, resigned from the Academy, and faced widespread criticism. His reputation, once defined by likability and control, was now permanently linked to a single emotional outburst. No matter what he does next, this moment will follow him. This was not a career built slowly or destroyed slowly. It was one walk, one reaction, and one live broadcast that rewrote a legacy in seconds. Live television does not care about context. It only cares about what everyone saw. If moments like this remind you how fast a legacy can change on live TV, hit subscribe and stay with us. Because the next clip might rewrite another career in real time. Career in real time. Career in real time. Career in real time. John Travolta. In 2014, John Travolta stepped onto the Oscars stage as a seasoned Hollywood icon. Decades of stardom, countless red carpets, and enough award show experience to make this moment routine. His task was simple. Introduce the singer about to perform Let It Go, the biggest song on the planet at the time. What came out of his mouth was not her name. Instead of Idina Menzel, Travolta delivered a completely new identity to the world, a name so wildly incorrect that it instantly sounded fictional. The audience laughed. The internet paused for half a second, and then the memes began printing themselves at industrial speed. The moment was brief, but live television is ruthless with short moments. That single introduction overshadowed the performance itself. Social media replayed it endlessly, remixing the clip, turning the mispronunciation into a running joke that refused to die. For days, it felt like Hollywood had collectively agreed to forget the Oscars existed solely to focus on one mangled name. Travolta quickly apologized, and to her credit, Menzel handled the situation with grace. There was no public feud, no lasting hostility, just an awkward mistake frozen in pop culture amber. His career did not collapse, his reputation did not implode, but the damage was subtle and persistent. From that night on, John Travolta was no longer just an actor. He was the man who introduced Adele Dazeem. Live television did not ruin his career. It simply gave him a nickname he never asked for and will never fully escape. Howard Dean. In 2004, Howard Dean was a serious contender for the Democratic nomination. He had momentum, grassroots energy, and a message that resonated with voters tired of politics as usual. After finishing third in the Iowa caucuses, Dean took the stage to rally supporters and prove that his campaign was far from over. Then came the scream. At the end of his speech, fired up and full of adrenaline, Dean let out an enthusiastic yell meant to energize the crowd. In the room, it worked. On television, stripped of context and replayed endlessly, it looked strange, awkward, and completely unpresidential. The media looped it nonstop. Late-night hosts had a field day. The internet, still young but already ruthless, crowned Stephen Merchant, Nicole Scherzinger. When Stephen Merchant steps into flirt mode with Nicole Scherzinger, the atmosphere is supposed to feel like a casual party, a bar, a chance encounter. He opens with confidence that sounds rehearsed, but hopeful. "Hey, looking good. Saw you on the X Factor, Nicole. It's not smooth, but it's serviceable." Nicole answers politely, calmly, almost professionally. "Oh, that's cool. No tease, no spark, just courtesy." And in that tiny pause after her reply, something breaks. The silence lands harder than any rejection. Stephen feels it instantly, the kind of quiet that tells you the flirt has already died. Instead of recovering, he spirals. "Jesus," he blurts out, already narrating his own failure. That was enthusiastic. Laughter erupts, but it's not saving him, it's exposing him. The bravado collapses, replaced by wounded pride and comic self-sabotage. Then comes the pivot, sharp and reckless. "I'm not actually hitting on you," he insists, offended by the rejection he imagined and received at the same time. The line doesn't soften the moment, it escalates it. The flirt turns defensive, the joke turns personal. And then Stephen lights the match. "Excuse me, who are you?" he snaps before delivering the kill shot. "Forget you. I'll talk to your more beautiful friend in the middle. It's outrageous, unnecessary, and completely unearned, which is why it works." Nicole doesn't flinch. She watches amused and unbothered as a man implodes on his own punchline. No romance, no recovery arc, just a flawless public demonstration of how one lukewarm response can turn confidence into chaos and awkward rejection into unforgettable comedy. Borat, Melanie Blatt. When Borat turns his attention to Melanie Blatt, the room already knows something terrible is about to happen. They just don't know how bad yet. Borat leans in with that familiar grin, the one that signals danger disguised as curiosity. Melanie, successful, married, and seated on a polite talk show couch, laughs nervously as he begins analyzing her reactions like a deranged detective. In Borat's universe, kindness is consent, politeness is passion, and silence is practically a proposal. He squints at her, thinking out loud, narrating his delusion in real time. "It looks to me," he says slowly, confidently, "that Melanie may well be up for it." The audience groans and laughs at the same time. Melanie smiles, tighter trapped between professionalism and disbelief, while Borat doubles down. He interprets every uncomfortable giggle as encouragement, every forced laugh as chemistry. Reality bends, social norms collapse. And then he asks the question no one should ever ask another human being on television. "Would you like to make a toilet?" "Melanie?" The studio explodes, applause, laughter, shock, secondhand embarrassment crashing together. Melanie's face says everything words can't. This has gone too far, and we all know it. Borat isn't flirting, he's steamrolling, weaponizing ignorance and confidence into one perfect cringe moment. It's obscene, absurd, and painfully effective. You laugh because you're horrified. You cringe because it's real. And somewhere in that chaos, Borat once again proves his greatest trick, exposing how fast civility collapses when someone refuses to play by its rules. Elizabeth Banks, Kylie Minogue. When Elizabeth Banks locks eyes with Kylie Minogue, it starts out harmless, playful, even classy. A game of dares, a laugh, nothing dangerous on paper. Elizabeth, wearing the grin of someone about to cause trouble, throws out the challenge like it's no big deal. Find an unattractive man in the audience and serenade him. The crowd howls. Kylie freezes for half a beat. She smiles, but it's the smile of someone realizing escape is no longer an option. Kylie protests just enough to stay polite, but the wheels are already in motion. Cameras swing, fingers point. Somewhere in the audience, an unsuspecting man is about to have the most confusing night of his life. Kylie steps forward, professionalism battling pure embarrassment. She sings sweet, sincere, devastatingly committed, pouring pop star romance onto a man who clearly did not wake up expecting this. The contrast is brutal global icon meets awkward reality, and neither can back out now. The studio erupts, laughter, applause, disbelief. Elizabeth watches, delighted, knowing she has unleashed chaos without lifting a finger. Kylie survives it with grace, humor, and a self-awareness that keeps the moment from turning cruel. It's not mean-spirited, it's absurd, surreal, and painfully funny. A reminder that even legends can be thrown into social freefall and still land on their feet. If your idol were given an awkward dare like Kylie's and she stood right in front of you singing, would you feel uncomfortable, or would you sit back and enjoy the song? Harrison Ford, Ryan Gosling. When Harrison Ford starts talking about Ryan Gosling, it's clear this story is already drifting off the runway. Harrison is trying to sound respectful, enthusiastic, very much in control. He explains how he read the script, loved the character, loved the idea of the casting, and immediately called the producers with one simple suggestion. Then it happens. He pauses, squints into the distance, and confidently says the wrong name. Not once, but enough to make everyone in the room lean forward. Why don't we see if we can get, Ryan, he says as if warming up. Then comes the fatal slip. Ryan Gosling. Too late, the damage is done. The hesitation gives it away. Harrison tries to power through, pretending nothing happened, but the audience catches the wobble. Laughter breaks out and the story derails. This is Harrison Ford's cinematic legend suddenly trapped in a moment every human fears forgetting a colleague's name in public. Instead of recovering smoothly, he digs himself deeper. He rambles about green rooms, cameras, and reception areas as if more words might bury the mistake. They don't. The harder he pushes, the funnier it gets. And that's the magic of the moment. No ego, no anger, just a great actor exposed as gloriously, painfully human. A reminder that even icons can short-circuit mid-sentence and accidentally turn a simple compliment into comedy. Tiffany Haddish, Dave Bautista. Tiffany Haddish sits across from Dave Bautista. The interview barely qualifies as an interview. From the first second, Tiffany is not listening, she's evaluating. Dave starts explaining his journey from amateur wrestling to professional wrestling to jiu-jitsu, speaking calmly, thoughtfully, like a man prepared to promote a movie. Tiffany nods, but her eyes are already doing something else entirely. The facts are irrelevant. The body has entered the room. She cuts in with sudden enthusiasm, suggesting they all do jiu-jitsu together before stopping herself to ask the question hanging in the air. Is this a sex thing? The audience explodes. Dave freezes, then laughs, assuring her it's not. That doesn't help. Tiffany leans forward, fully committed now, scanning him like a sculpture in a museum that definitely allows touching. "Oh my god, look at you," she says. "Yes, beefcake." Every word lands harder than the last. Dave tries to regain control, but it's over. Tiffany keeps going, calling him beefy, praising his physique, admiring him with zero shame and even less subtlety. He smiles flattered and overwhelmed while the crowd roars at the complete collapse of professionalism. No boundaries crossed, no lines, blurred, just one comedian openly thirsting on live television and refusing to apologize for it. It's chaotic, honest, and hilarious. A perfect reminder that sometimes the funniest interviews are the ones that never stood a chance. Conan O'Brien, Nina Dobrev. Conan O'Brien invites Nina Dobrev to demonstrate a yoga move the segment pretends to be about flexibility. It isn't. Nina calmly explains that she normally does this pose against a wall. Conan, sensing danger and opportunity in equal measure, immediately volunteers himself. Shoes come off. The audience leans in. The red-haired host, already too excited, agrees to become human furniture on national television. Nina positions herself, asking him to stay straight. Conan nods like a man who has not thought this through. She leans back, using his chest as support, lifting herself with effortless control. Conan's reaction is instant and catastrophic. His face says panic, delight, and disbelief all at once. The crowd erupts as he realizes he has miscalculated the level of intimacy this educational moment requires. He squeals, he giggles, he completely loses the ability to host. Nina, meanwhile, stays professional, balanced, and unbothered, holding the pose while Conan melts beneath her like a man experiencing spiritual awakening. The segment ends not with enlightenment, but with applause, chaos, and a host who will never again volunteer to be a wall. Not yoga, not flirting, just pure glorious late-night television gone off the rails. Gordon Ramsay, Gino D'Acampo. Gordon Ramsay brings up Gino D'Acampo. It starts like harmless behind-the-scenes banter from a travel show. Caravans, long shoots, exhausting days. Gordon casually asks where Gino slept that night. Gino answers vaguely. Then Gordon drops the bomb, his voice rising with disbelief as he relives the moment. 2:30 in the morning. Dead of night. Silence. And suddenly movement. Someone is unzipping his sleeping bag. Gordon reenacts it with mounting horror. Gino didn't knock, didn't ask. He climbed inside, fully committed. Spooning, making noises. Gordon shouts, flails, panics on camera as the audience collapses in laughter. He got in the bed with you, the host asks. Gordon confirms it louder each time as if volume might make the memory less traumatic. Then comes the detail that seals it: Gino was naked. The crowd loses its mind. Gordon insists he was scared. Gino shrugs, unimpressed. Fear apparently is optional at 2:30 a.m. Later, when it seems Gordon has won the story, Gino strikes back. Calm, surgical, he accuses Gordon of waking him up by smashing a wheelie suitcase into his foot because he needed a pee. Gordon denies it. Instantly exposed. Did you bang your wheelie on his foot, the host asks. Gordon sighs. Yes. Applause erupts. It's chaos, revenge, and brotherly warfare disguised as cooking television. Two grown men, world-famous chefs, publicly destroying each other with stories neither should have ever told. Cameron Diaz, Kylie Minogue, Richard Ayoade. On the Graham Norton show, when Cameron Diaz and Kylie Minogue casually admit they wish more men would just ask them out, it lands like a challenge tossed into the studio. Two global stars, both single, both smiling. Cameron says it plainly, yes, guys can ask. Kylie agrees, nodding along. The audience laughs, but the energy shifts. Because once something like that is said on live television, someone in the room is going to have to respond. Silence would feel like surrender. That's when Richard Ayoade steps in, not with charm, not with confidence, but with surgical awkwardness. He listens, processes, and calmly drops the line that detonates the couch "I'm single" at the moment. No build-up, no wink, just a statement delivered like a fact on a form. Cameron turns. Kylie looks over. The audience erupts. Richard follows it with a stiff, overly formal, well, hello, as if he's greeting a neighbor, not two of the most famous women in the room. What makes the moment unforgettable isn't flirting, it's the refusal to flirt. Richard doesn't rescue the tension or smooth anything over. He lets the silence stretch, forcing Cameron and Kylie to sit with the absurdity of their own wish. For a brief, beautiful moment, the universe actually listens. Two stars say just ask, and one painfully British man actually does, with all the romance of a tax reminder. No date, no fantasy payoff. Just perfectly timed, exquisitely uncomfortable television. James Blunt. On the Graham Norton show, James Blunt sits down already knowing danger is nearby. Graham Norton has that look, the one that means research has been done and mercy will not be shown. James smiles politely relaxed until Graham announces he's been reading some of James Blunt's tweets. That's when the mood shifts. Because James Blunt on Twitter is not a gentle acoustic balladeer, he's feral, and now it's all about to be read out loud. Graham picks one, slowly, clearly. A tweet from a fan admitting they feel a dire need to listen to James Blunt while menstruating. The studio detonates. James doesn't flinch, he doesn't blush, he doesn't apologize. He nods like a man receiving useful product feedback. "That's helpful," he says calmly. "I'll pass it on to my marketing team." The laughter gets louder because James isn't embarrassed, he's weaponizing the embarrassment. While others would panic, James leans into the chaos, fully aware that discomfort is now part of his brand. Then Graham asks what James would even tweet about himself. Without missing a beat, James fires back with ruthless self-awareness and zero respect for the moment. The jokes turn darker, sharper, borderline unhinged. And that's the secret. James Blunt survives the segment not by defending himself, but by proving he's always one step ahead of the humiliation. On that couch, he isn't the soft-voiced romantic people expect. He's a sniper smiling politely while shooting every expectation in the head. Do you think James Blunt handled that moment perfectly, or could he have played it better? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Charlie Hunnam on the Graham Norton Show. Charlie Hunnam thinks he's telling a harmless story from his teenage years. A memory softened by time. A classic tale of young nerves and bad timing. He explains how back in school there was a popular girl he liked. He waited too long, asked her out at the last possible moment just days before the dance. She said yes. Victory at last. Or so he thought. Then the twist lands. Charlie casually admits that he later found out she was already planning to go with someone else. The room reacts with sympathetic laughter. It's a familiar wound. But Graham Norton isn't done. He digs deeper, asking for the name. Charlie says it. And suddenly the past walks straight onto the couch. The man who stole his prom date sitting right there in the audience. The realization hits in real time. Charlie's face changes. Confusion, recognition, horror. Laughter erupts as the coincidence becomes too perfect to be scripted. What should have been a nostalgic anecdote turns into a live reunion with unresolved teenage trauma. Charlie takes it well, laughing, shaking his head, owning the absurdity of it all. No bitterness, no resentment, just the strange, humbling truth that no matter how famous you become, your worst high school moment can still find you. Especially under studio lights with an audience watching and the universe enjoying the joke just a little too much. Idris Elba. Idris Elba walks in with the calm confidence of a man who looks like he has his life under control. Successful career, global heartthrob, deep voice. Everything seems fine until Graham casually brings up Idris and texting. That's when the warning signs appear. Graham explains that there comes a certain hour at night when Idris should not be allowed near a phone. Idris laughs, already knowing where this is going. Too late to stop it now. The story unfolds like a slow-motion car crash. Late night, phone in hand. Phone in. Idris types out a message meant for one person, private, suggestive, absolutely not for public consumption. Come over. Simple. Dangerous. Then it happens. A slip, a tap, Twitter, sent to everyone. Idris reenacts the moment of realization with pure panic, describing how he looked away for a second, looked back, and saw the words had gone out into the world. The audience screams. Graham howls. Idris admits the only thought in his head was relief that it wasn't worse. That could have been much worse, he says. A picture of my nuts or something. What makes the moment legendary isn't the mistake, it's the honesty. Idris doesn't pretend it was a joke or a promo stunt. He owns it, fully, laughs at himself, admits defeat. On that couch, the world's coolest man becomes painfully human, tired, careless, and one wrong tap away from disaster. It's a reminder that no amount of fame protects you from technology, and that sometimes the scariest thing in the world isn't scandal, it's autocorrect social media and a phone after midnight. Kevin Hart. Naomi Scott. Kevin Hart is deep into one of his motivational dad speeches. He talks about money, success, and responsibility, explaining how he works hard to keep his kids humble. According to Kevin, he doesn't want them growing up thinking private jets and luxury are normal. So he takes them back to Philadelphia, shows them where he grew up, reminds them of hard work and struggle. It's heartfelt, earnest, very Kevin Hart. He builds the story carefully, describing how they land and how he plans the lesson step by step until Naomi Scott quietly steps in and detonates the entire narrative. Calm voice, innocent face, perfect timing. She points out the detail Kevin forgot to hide: they still flew there on his private jet. The studio freezes for half a second. Kevin realizes it at the exact same moment the audience does. Too late. The illusion is shattered. Laughter explodes. Kevin collapses into self-awareness, knowing there is absolutely no recovery from this. All the talk about humility, struggle, and where I came from instantly collapses under the weight of that one fact. Naomi doesn't gloat, she doesn't push, she just lets the truth sit there, devastating and hilarious. It's a perfect Graham Norton moment, a big personality building a powerful story only to have it undone by one soft-spoken sentence. Sometimes the funniest punchlines don't come from comedians, they come from reality refusing to cooperate. Norm Macdonald. On Late Night with Conan O'Brien, Norm Macdonald does what he does best, absolutely refuses to cooperate. The setup is normal enough, a guest is there to promote a movie, the host tees up polite questions, and everyone expects the usual late-night rhythm. Norm listens and immediately decides to burn it all down. He interrupts, derails, and hijacks the conversation before it can even begin, steering it towards sex jokes, bizarre metaphors, and comments that land just half a second too late to be stopped. Every attempt to return to the movie is sabotaged. Norm asks questions no one asked for, lingers on uncomfortable details, and delivers punchlines with that deadpan stare that makes it impossible to tell whether he's joking or confessing something deeply wrong. The host tries to save the segment. The guest tries to stay professional. Norm keeps pushing, circling the topic like a shark that smells weakness. The audience laughs, then groans, then laughs harder because the tension becomes the joke. What makes the moment legendary is that Norm isn't chasing approval. He's not trying to be likable. He's testing how far he can go before the entire structure collapses. And for a few glorious minutes, it does. Promotion becomes impossible. Order disappears. The show belongs to Norm now. It's uncomfortable, inappropriate, and completely intentional, a reminder that true chaos on television doesn't come from accidents, but from someone who knows exactly what they're doing and chooses violence anyway. Did you enjoy the moments featured in today's video? Comment, like below, let us know. Sacha Baron Cohen on the Golden Globe Awards stage. Sacha Baron Cohen doesn't walk up to accept an award, he storms it like a man with unfinished business. He begins calmly, almost sincerely thanking the experience for changing his life. He talks about traveling across America, seeing its beauty, its landscapes, its people. For a brief moment, it sounds like a serious, thoughtful speech. The audience relaxes. That's the mistake. Without warning, he pivots. The tone darkens. The smile sharpens. He announces that he has also seen the ugly side of America, the part rarely exposed to daylight. Then he names it the ancient tentacles of his co-star. The room explodes, laughter, gasps, applause colliding at once. Cohen doesn't pause. He escalates. He vividly describes a scene where he had his co-star's 2 wrinkled golden globes resting on his chin. And then comes the line that seals it, "I'd better win a bloody award for this." What makes the moment legendary isn't just the vulgarity, it's the precision. Every word is intentional. Every pause is calculated. Cohen uses the most prestigious, polished award stage in Hollywood to remind everyone why he exists, to destroy comfort, mock decorum, and force laughter out of shock. While others thank agents and families, he thanks trauma, humiliation, and absurdity. It's not a speech, it's an ambush. And by the time he leaves the stage, one truth is undeniable: no matter how glamorous the room, Sacha Baron Cohen will always find a way to make it deeply, uncomfortably human. Graham Norton. Graham Norton is never just a host, he's a quiet predator with a velvet smile. He doesn't interrupt, he doesn't shout. He lets celebrities relax, laugh, sip their drinks, and forget where they are. And then when the guard is down, he strikes. A photo from the archives. A quote they hoped was buried, a story that should never have been told out loud. Graham doesn't force chaos, he invites it politely and watches it bloom. His real talent isn't comedy, it's timing. He knows exactly when to ask the follow-up question, exactly when to pretend innocence, exactly when to turn a harmless anecdote into a full-blown public confession. Guests think they're safe because he sounds friendly, almost gentle. They're wrong. One sentence from Graham can unravel years of PR training. One raised eyebrow can turn a polished star into a panicking human being scrambling for dignity. And that's why it works. Graham Norton doesn't humiliate his guests. He gives them just enough rope to do it themselves. The couch becomes a confessional. The audience becomes accomplices, and the stories spiral into something too honest, too awkward, too funny to control. By the time the laughter dies down, careers are still intact, but egos are bruised and secrets are out. In a world of scripted interviews and safe answers, Graham remains dangerous, not because he's cruel, but because he understands one brutal truth: the best television happens when people forget they're on television. Denzel Washington. Denzel Washington sits on the couch with the calm authority of a man who has won Oscars and fears absolutely no one. The conversation is flowing smoothly until Graham turns to the audience greeting a man who announces it's his birthday. It's meant to be a warm, cheerful moment, a little crowd interaction, a polite round of applause. Then Denzel leans forward, eyes narrowing slightly, and decides he's not playing along. What does he want? Denzel blurts out, genuinely confused. The room freezes. Graham tries to keep things light, but Denzel isn't done. A prize, he continues, incredulous. We were all born! The audience erupts. It's brutal, blunt, and delivered with the tone of a man stating a universal truth that no one bothered to check before opening their mouth. There's no setup, no punchline wink, just raw, unfiltered logic crashing straight through British politeness. What makes the moment legendary isn't the joke itself, but who says it. Denzel doesn't smile. He doesn't apologize. He looks like a man offended by the very concept of celebrating something so ordinary. The birthday guest laughs nervously, the audience roars, and Graham briefly loses control of his own show. For a split second, Hollywood gravitas meets everyday nonsense and Denzel wins. It's not cruel, it's not planned. It's just honesty delivered with such authority that it becomes comedy. A reminder that sometimes the funniest person in the room is the one who refuses to pretend. Joan Rivers. Joan Rivers doesn't tiptoe into the subject of aging. She kicks the door off its hinges. While others soften the truth with platitudes, Joan goes straight for the nerve. She explains that getting older is especially brutal if you were once attractive. Youth gives you armor, she says, and when it's gone, the world doesn't whisper about it, it shouts. The audience laughs already uneasy because they know she's not joking. Not really. Joan sharpens the blade. Men, she says, don't age, they decay loudly. They moan, they groan, and somehow they always do it into the wrong ear. She talks about faking orgasms when she was younger and now faking hearing. The jokes land fast, merciless, and precise, each one daring the audience to stop laughing and admit they recognize the truth in it. Joan doesn't seek sympathy. She despises it. What she offers instead is survival through brutality. If you can't beat time, at least mock it until it flinches. What makes the moment unforgettable is Joan's refusal to comfort anyone, including herself. There's no inspirational bow at the end. No age is just a number. Just a woman who stared aging in the face, insulted it, and charged forward anyway. On that couch, Joan Rivers isn't just telling jokes, she's issuing a warning and a lesson at the same time. Growing old is humiliating, unfair, and unavoidable, so you might as well laugh first and hardest. Ricky Gervais, Matt Damon, Ben Affleck. At the Golden Globe Awards. Ricky Gervais does what Hollywood fears most, he tells the truth and enjoys it. Standing on stage with nothing to lose, Ricky introduces the next presenter with a smile that already signals damage. He praises the success, the talent, the global fame, and then casually reminds the room that Ben Affleck has cheated on everyone in his life except one person. The pause is deliberate. The audience leans in. And that person Ricky says perfectly calm is Matt Damon. The room detonates. Matt walks out smiling, but the smile is tight, the kind you wear when you've just been dragged into someone else's scandal on live television. Ben is left sitting there, taking the hit in silence, knowing there is no defense, no comeback, no way to pretend this is just a joke. Ricky doesn't linger. He doesn't explain. He lets the line hang in the air like smoke after an explosion. What makes the moment savage isn't the insult, it's the efficiency. One sentence, no exaggeration, no theatrics. Just a perfectly aimed truth delivered on the most glamorous stage in the industry. Matt survives it with grace. Ben absorbs it like a man who knows resistance is pointless. And Ricky Gervais walks off knowing he's done exactly what he came to do, remind Hollywood that beneath the tuxedos and applause, reputations are fragile and comedy has no obligation to protect them. Obligation to protect them. Obligation to protect them. Obligation to protect. Ricky Gervais, Matt Damon, Ben Affleck. At the Golden Globe Awards. Ricky Gervais does what Hollywood fears most, he tells the truth and enjoys it. Standing on stage with nothing to lose, Ricky introduces the next presenter with a smile that already signals damage. He praises the success, the talent, the global fame, and then casually reminds the room that Ben Affleck has cheated on everyone in his life except one person. The pause is deliberate. The audience leans in, and that person Ricky says perfectly calm is Matt Damon. The room detonates. Matt walks out smiling, but the smile is tight, the kind you wear when you've just been dragged into someone else's scandal on live television. Ben is left sitting there, taking the hit in silence, knowing there is no defense, no comeback, no way to pretend this is just a joke. Ricky doesn't linger. He doesn't explain. He lets the line hang in the air like smoke after an explosion. What makes the moment savage isn't the insult, it's the efficiency. One sentence, no exaggeration, no theatrics. Just a perfectly aimed truth delivered on the most glamorous stage in the industry. Matt survives it with grace. Ben absorbs it like a man who knows resistance is pointless. And Ricky Gervais walks off knowing he's done exactly what he came to do, remind Hollywood that beneath the tuxedos and applause, reputations are fragile and comedy has no obligation to protect them. Obligation to protect them. Obligation to protect them. Obligation to protect them.